Good morning. That works better. I'd like to start with saying two things. The first is thank you to the entire Open Minds team for the wonderful invitation to invite Emily and myself to come and speak here at this conference. And the second one is that since it was minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit in Montreal when I left, I caught a little cold just before I got here, so my voice is not what it usually is, and I'll probably cough here and there, so I apologize for that. I'll start with a little bit on who I am. My name is Luigi Vendatelli. I've been actively researching the phenomenon for a very, very long time. This all started when I was very young. I was 8 years old, and my grandfather witnessed a silver disc on fire flying overhead. And growing up in an Italian Catholic family, the subject of UFOs was really not popular at the dinner table. So this really caught my attention. I was very young, but I remember saying, he wouldn't lie to us. He wouldn't say that for no reason. And he knew a lot about the military. He was a soldier in the Italian army. He was a prisoner in a concentration camp in Germany for 2 years during Second World War. So he knew everything about American aircrafts, Italian, Russian, British, and German machines. So what he said he saw was none of that. So this started me on this big journey, and it's been quite a journey. I started off with reading a lot about this subject. I started off about when I was 8. Again, my mother used to come in my room and say, you need to go outside and play and ride your bike because you're always reading books. And I was reading, I remember buying books and reading about Stanton Friedman's work and Bud Hopkins' work and so many other people, and I was a kid. And people thought I was too much of a geek. And so it wasn't something that made me very popular back then. I learned a lot, and for me it was really important to learn as much as I could, because I said if I ever get involved and I ever do start talking to people about this phenomenon, I want to know what I'm talking about, and I also want to approach it ethically and professionally. And I also wanted to basically learn the inner workings of it in general. So I did a lot of research, read a lot, and realized there was something flying in the sky, but that was not what was interesting me. What was interesting me was it wasn't who are they, is why are they here? And so I got really involved in researching the abduction cases, encounters with beings or entities of unknown origin, and did a lot of that for many, many years. And it was on and off. This is something that I've done on pastime. I do have a job other than researching aliens. You have to, because it doesn't pay the bills, trust me. And so I'm a president of an international trade company. I have an office, our head office is in Montreal. I have a little office in upstate New York and one in southern China. I've traveled the world 11 times over in my career. I've met people from so many different countries, so many different ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds. And throughout my life, I spent a lot of time talking to people about this phenomenon during casual conversations to see if people would be open to this phenomenon. And it always struck me because they respected me in my work, yet the moment I would say alien or ET or UFO, I was crazy. And this went on for many years, so I went on and off with this research. Sometimes I put a lot more effort into it than others and went on with my life and my work. And recently, in Montreal, and it's a few years back, put a picture of our city right up there, Montreal is a beautiful multicultural city, and it's a bilingual city. And I started opening up more, not only to my friends that knew that I was doing this research, but also to people that didn't know. And I decided that I was going to talk about this publicly. I decided that I was no longer going to make this a slightly secret of my life. It's almost like coming out of the closet, but about aliens, you know? And so I started talking about this publicly, and thanks to Dr. David Jacobs, who I admire a lot. I've read a lot of his work, and I was very fortunate. I'm very humbled to have worked with David and learned a lot from David. He introduced me to a professor in Montreal who's a retired professor at McGill University, Professor Don Donderi. Some of you might know him. And I'm glad to say that him and I have become friends today. I've shared a lot with him, a lot of cases that came through. And David obviously did a lot of work on abductions, and I was obviously interested in that field. And Professor Donderi also wrote a book on ETs and abductions. So I learned a lot from these researchers that have had, I mean, they've been studying this phenomenon as long as I've been alive. So starting into the Montreal community, one of the things that is that helped me a lot was the fact that I'm perfectly bilingual. I speak French fluently, which is the primary language in Montreal. And this allowed me to be in contact with a lot of people because they didn't know who to go to. There were not that many people in the French community that had the expertise or the knowledge of this phenomenon. So they oftentimes stayed quiet or lived with their experiences in fear that if they talked about it to anybody, that they would be ridiculed. And so my research began because I was able to communicate with them, and I was also able to make them feel very comfortable talking to me. And I'm talking about people who've had encounters with beings that to this day I wouldn't be able to say who they are and what they are. All I can say is that I've met with an enormous amount of wonderful people and very honest people who've had experiences that resemble, obviously some of them resemble one another, some don't, but it's very important, it was very important to me to be able to offer them my helping hand when they were wanting to come out and talk about this. So I'm just going to quickly run off. This is obviously Canada, and I circled the province of Quebec because this is where I work mainly, and it's a huge territory. It's about 2.5 times the size of Texas. And there's a lot going on, and 90% of that is Francophone. They speak only French. Even in the native areas north of the province, they either speak their native language or they speak French. So there's a very big disconnect there with the outside world in terms of knowledge or information on the phenomenon. One of the biggest things I worked on in the last couple of years is a case that, believe it or not, in Quebec was named in 2014 the second most popular story after Justin Bieber. I couldn't believe that actually made it up there, but yeah. And it was a gentleman, a blue-collar worker coming back home, and he snapped a picture of a black triangle flying right over the highway. And this made front-page news. They went on national television. They were talking about this all over the place. And I was very fortunate to be one of the first people to communicate with them. This was not an abduction case. This was just an incredible up-close and personal encounter with the craft. And so this particular case was so big And because I was associated to it, a lot of people found out about it, so I started getting bombarded with so many other people who had encounters. It wasn't just, I saw a UFO, it was, I think I had something happen to me. And, sometimes you get a lot of people say a lot of things, but there were a few really, really interesting ones in there. Many cases that preceded and followed that, many of which were encounters with strange beings. I have one particular story that I'll share just before I get into the aerial incident. There's a woman in Montreal, and this case came to me from the Montreal Police Department. I was contacted through McGill University, through a police officer who had met a woman who had an encounter. This is a woman who had no idea what aliens were or UFOs were. She had no idea. And had a very incredible encounter where she was able to snap 5 consecutive images of a being. And she was 2 feet away. The Montreal police had these pictures in their files and didn't know what to do with them and thought, they're not going to go public with something like that. So they came to see me. And the officer who was in charge of that felt confident and felt comfortable talking about it with me, shared the pictures with me. And I met with the witness, who had a very frightening experience because she thought it was a demon. She's very religious, so she wasn't thinking aliens. She thought this was a demon that approached her. One of the really incredible things is there was missing time. There was about an hour and 15 minutes that were missing from during the whole encounter. We're working really, really hard to get the pictures released. The police have been told by the witness that she did not want to talk about it, did not want to go public with it. The police is not allowing me to go public with it. But I did want to mention it now because I am working on it, and I'm hoping that maybe by next year I'll be able to present what I consider to be one of the most incredible pieces of evidence I've ever seen in my life. I can't tell if that being is from another planet. All I can tell is it's not one of us. It's definitely not one of us. So why did I put the human being slide? As I studied encounters and I studied people who went through these things, and this is really profoundly important when I even speak about my friend Emily, is that as I researched the phenomenon of being contacted or having an encounter of some sort with these beings, the more I went forward with it, the more I realized that I had to look into my humanity. It was really profound information that was coming from different people. It affected them on a very human level. Whether they would be professionals, lawyers, white collar, blue collar, it doesn't matter. They were all affected at a very, very profound level, very emotional level. This is very important because oftentimes when we hear about somebody having an incredible experience, we get excited. We want to know, oh my God, that's so cool. What did you see? What did they say? What did they look like? What did they smell like? And we tend to sometimes forget that the witness or the person, the victim, whether it be a victim or a witness, whatever, the experiencer, is going through something really profound inside. Something that is so fragile that we have to be very conscious of that. When they say they had an encounter with another being, with a being from somewhere else, they didn't just see a light in the sky. They didn't just see a craft or something zigzag in the air. They were contacted in a way that we don't usually contact each other. They were approached in ways that we don't approach each other. And this is fundamental because we start looking at the human being. We have to start looking at us and listening to, actually, understanding us as humans before asking so many questions because we're excited or curious to know. It's like, I always compare it to a rape victim. And if somebody's been raped, we do want to understand and find out what happened, but sometimes just talking about it can cause a lot of damage to the person. In the last 6 cases I've dealt with, every single case has had extreme PTSD problems, post-traumatic stress problems. Whether the experiences were positive or not, it didn't matter. They were always affecting the people very, very profoundly. And so, as I continued in this, I began using my personal skills, not my knowledge as a ufologist or researcher in this particular field, but I started using my skills as a human, as a businessman, as a brother, as a son, as a human being. And using those skills to the best of my abilities to have these people feel very confident, very comfortable in opening up and talking about these really, really unbelievable experiences. And sometimes what they've experienced or what they've seen is so incredible that it's difficult to even wrap our minds around it. We always want to make it fit into our construct. Sometimes we make that mistake. I've made that mistake. And we want it to feel that it has to be understood. We have to explain it. They need to explain it to us in a way where it's understood. But I used this example a long time ago, and because I'm talking about logic, this logical understanding versus conscious or emotional understanding. I said, if you have a zebra, and you're standing in front of the zebra, and you're holding your cell phone in front of a zebra, and you want the zebra to understand that you're holding your cell phone, it's never going to figure that out. It's going to look at you, it's going to know that you have something in your hands. And you could turn it on and go, look, I have a nice phone. But the zebra doesn't understand that it's a phone. It doesn't understand what you're saying. But if you have a genuinely benign attitude towards the zebra won't feel threatened. If you have a threatening way of going about it, the zebra will feel threatened. So somehow that will communicate between you and the zebra, but not the fact that you want to show it the phone. This is really important because sometimes when I'm speaking to people like Emily and many others, the communication doesn't necessarily come through like we want it to come through. So I put this slide, human being, and then I followed it with being human. It's like inverting the words, right? But we have to be human to understand anything that is alien. It's the most important thing we need to learn how to do every time we approach this. And we have to approach it with a lot of caution because it does have profound implications. It's a colorful universe. And I say this because I've had so many, I've learned a lot while I've been here, and as I've met so many great people who've been researching and writing books about the phenomenon for many, many years. And when we look at humanity, just in this room, we're so diverse. Each individual person has a completely different way of going about their lives. Every person sees life in a different way, even though we have similar ways of looking at it, but we are individuals. Now, I'm Italian, Canadian. Many of you are American. There's differences. We have cultural differences. And then within each culture and within each different segment of humanity, there's good and bad. There's really good Italian people, and there's really bad Italian people. Good cooks, bad cooks, blah, blah, blah. And the reason why I say this is because if we try to say they're all bad or they're all good or they're doing this and this is why they're here, this is why they're visiting us, this is why they're taking us, this is why this has happened, this is why that's happened. I don't know that we have that answer. The reason why I say that, and I actually said this in an interview with Alejandro months ago, and I'll make a comparison to a very negative abduction situation where somebody's had been put on a table and held down and something happened to them and some DNA tissue was taken. If you're walking down the street and you see a father and a daughter, and they're walking, and somebody decides to attack the father, punch him out, and then begin to rape the daughter in front of the father. Now, this is horrible. And then you would have the father immediately go and protect the daughter. Now, there would be somebody else walking by. They would just walk by just at the moment that the father starts beating the guy up, obviously. And they would think, oh my God, that guy's so mean. Look how he's hurting that person. Because they weren't there a few seconds before. The reason why I use that example is because in a lot of these encounters, we see the last leg of them. We don't see what happened before. We don't know what happened before. Was there a meeting? Were they all sitting at a table going, okay, tonight we're going to go to Arizona and we're going to go get John because we need a piece of his whatever? We don't know that. We have no idea what happens before. And so sometimes it's perceived as really negative, but it might not be. And sometimes it's perceived as really positive, and it might not be as well. We don't have enough data to support any conclusions. All we have is data. And so I say it's a colorful universe because as a human race, the first thing we need to at least do, and I'm sure many here do that, is we at least acknowledge the fact that it's real. We acknowledge the fact that there is something going on and there are beings that are somehow contacting or doing things to people in our society. And so this brings me to talk about Ariel. Ariel, many of you probably know about this incident. It happened in Rua, Zimbabwe in 1994. Many dozens of school children were witnessed a craft. They were playing in the school ground at recess, and this craft landed between some trees, and two beings came out. And all these children were there to see this. The school teachers and the principal, everybody was inside having a staff meeting while all the children were outside playing, and they saw this. There's a lot of children who were really close, and it was probably, in my opinion, one of the most important events that has ever happened in history, because it happened in broad daylight in front of everybody. And these children who saw these beings and saw this craft and heard this high-pitched sound, it changed their lives. And I can say today that I'm very fortunate to have met one of those children, and I learned a lot about what happened, and she's going to come out and tell you exactly what happened. I also am very happy to have had the opportunity to meet Randall Nickerson, which is the main investigator and filmmaker of this event. Randall's been working on it for the last 8 years of his life. If it wasn't for Randall, this thing wouldn't be out there. I mean, this was a huge story back in 1994. It was on the news. I mean, it hit BBC, Reuters got a hold of it, and it was a giant incident. But then it just kind of, obviously, we all know John Mack was involved in that. And Randall took it to heart. And I have an enormous amount of respect for Randall. He went out to Zimbabwe when people said, hey, you might get killed out there. And he did it. He went out because he thought this is so important. This event was so fundamentally important for humanity that we had to investigate it. He had to investigate it. And so I got to meet Emily. In my life, I got to meet this cool girl who was one of the kids there, who was 5 feet away from two beings in broad daylight. And now, this is amazing because this is an incredible event. This is not at night, or this is not by herself or in her bedroom or taken somewhere or driving on a desert road. This is in front of everybody. This is like us here, and this happens. Wow. It's affected her I can tell you, I've been a big part of this journey for her, and she's opened up a lot with me and with Randall. It changed her entire view of humanity and of life. And I've learned so much from Emily that I could almost say that I've learned more from Emily and talking with Emily in the last year that I've learned in my entire research in this phenomenon. There's such a human side to this, and there's such an incredibly important message that has been sent out from this that we have to listen. We honestly, as humans, have to listen. So, actually, I'll just quickly, just before I go there. Not only did she have an experience in Rua, but she had an experience after that. And she'll talk a little bit about it. And the second experience she had triggered something extraordinary inside of her. And she started painting. She started expressing what she had seen. It was almost like she had kept all this incredible amount of information in a vault for 21 years, or 20 years. Actually 19, then because she's 21 now. And I put up a few here, and I've been tracking and researching some of the art that she did. What's really cool, by the way, is that her name is Emily Trim, and her initials are E.T. Yeah. It's actually really cool. That was my favorite movie when I was a kid. So I always said, one day if Steven Spielberg gets a hold of this, this is the real E.T. Not only was she painting and drawing, but she started channeling these symbols. And this was coming out. I've spent a long time with Emily, and I would like to just quickly say something. Emily and I are really close friends. Some people have thought that I was her boyfriend, and thank you for the compliment, but we're not dating. She's a very, very close friend of mine, and I'm somebody who cares about her enormously. I think she's extremely brave for coming here today and talking about this publicly. So I started researching all these symbols, and this is another incredible piece that she's done. It's really huge. And there's all these symbols that are all around, and they just come out. She just keeps seeing so many symbols. And it's quite telling. And we've been working at trying to extract some of them and to see if they match, and there's literally thousands of them that have come up. This particular image, Emily considers to be one of the most important ones. She says, because this is how it works. And in the background, you'll see the silhouette of a woman, a head with hair, and above her eyes are these big black eyes. Because she says the communication is done through the eyes. And that it's what they see, you see, what they see, she sees, what she sees, they see. And this is done even from a distance. It's incredible. This is another one, and if you guys see this in person, it's an incredible piece. It's actually an image of her putting her hands over her eyes because there's too much information coming through. And this is all these symbols. It's like a download, massive downloads of all these symbols. What do they mean? And why is this happening? And she's not crazy, I can tell you that for a fact. I mean, she's an incredibly brilliant, vibrant, super fun, cool girl who's had unbelievable things happen because of these encounters. This is one beautiful piece of one particular symbol. And this is my favorite. I was really lucky because I got this one as a gift. It's a life-size of the being that was standing there in Rua. The being was about 3.5, 4 foot high. So, I'm done talking. You must be happy about that. So, I'd like to introduce to you my very good friend, Emily Trim, one of the main witnesses at Rua, Zimbabwe in 1994. Thank you.
So I'm incredibly nervous. Can we hear me? Can we hear me now? All right. Oh, there I am. Okay. Hi, everyone. So I just want to say thank you. I am incredibly nervous, and it does take a lot of bravery and strength to come forward and speak on a topic. I just want to say thank you to Luigi, because it means a lot to me to have support. I'm shaking right now. But I'm here just to give my testimony, and he did mention that I was one of the main witnesses. I just want to say that we all were there. This is just my account and my testimony. I have had incredible and extraordinary experiences happen in my life and after Rua as well. I won't be speaking on all of those. I am under a documentary and a non-disclosure form right now, so I will be giving my testimony on an account and a little bit on one of the other experiences, which was very profound in my life as well. And so here I go, and thank you so much to everybody for attending. I've had such a wonderful and warm experience since I've been here, and here I am. So it was September 16th, 1994, Rua, Zimbabwe, at Ariel School. It was a regular school day, and we had all been let out for recess. Usually a duration for about 15 minutes. Get out, be active, and exert some energy to focus on the upcoming studies that we would be completing during our academic period. The sun was shining, and it was like a normal, beautiful day in Zimbabwe. Hot, but not humid, clear skies, and brush environments surrounded us. As this was a new school at the time, there was not a lot of playground equipment to play on, like we have here to entertain ourselves with. But we did have boundary logs and imaginations to create games and play together. One of the activities that we used to entertain ourselves with was the challenge of balancing and leaping from one log to the next to see who could get around the perimeter the quickest. As recess had just begun, my friend and I quickly began to engage in this activity, the race around the logs. Thinking that this was just going to be like every other day, a fun game and a challenge, little did we know that something extraordinary would occur. That was the day my world shattered, and my outlook on the world became something completely brand new to me. My family was in Zimbabwe at the time as missionaries working with the Salvation Army. I grew up in a Christian environment with a firm belief in God, and I was also a very curious girl growing up and liked to take risks and go after challenges. I was and am a very adventurous individual and often find myself looking into things, finding deeper meanings behind what is just there. I, however, never thought that this was ever going to happen to me. I share with you today my testimony as a child who was present, and each child will have their own account and their own process to this understanding. This is mine. As I was on the logs in the middle of leaping and racing, a high-pitched frequency began to occur. This immediately got my attention as the sound was something that could not be avoided. Like an emergency vehicle passing by, you are aware of its presence. This sound was piercing, as if penetrating the brain and the ears. I describe it like a frequency, but very high-pitched. Time had seemed to slow down, and I describe myself as also being slowed down. There was a flash in the sky, and it was bright, it was silver, and shining. This is when the ship arrived. It's hard to say how and why it all happened, but this is what I remember. There were two beings, all of a sudden, something that I had never seen before. They were mimicking the movements of the two of us leaping, but however, they weren't touching the ground. They then came to a halt and appeared in front of the two of us. Large heads, black eyes, reflective in their appearance, as if the shades were changing based on the light reflecting off of them. It's very difficult for me to say exactly what color they were, but they were around the same height as I was at the time, your average 8-year-old child. The beings were approximately around 3.5 to 4 feet tall, and they also had a little bit of a pot-bellied shape. No ears that I could see, and very little in terms of a mouth. They began to start communicating with us. This came as a form of a telepathic communication, which I believe is done through the eyes, and the ability to connect to the brain. I was receiving like you would a download on a computer, a download onto my brain in the form of images. It was like a slide projector show, but in fast motion. I don't recall what all the images are, and I wish that I could explain it better, but I do my best to communicate what I know and what I remember. I do remember, however, the last image being an explosion, and I say this not to cause concern for, but what I saw. It all happened so quickly. The recess bell sounded, and the beings were gone in an instant. What I remember walking away with was not fear, but feelings of sadness and feelings of hope. It was like a rush of emotions that came over me. Later on, we were all asked to draw out what we had seen, and many different groups of people had come in to debrief with us what had happened and give our testimonies right then and there. Being so young at the time and growing up in a home built of faith and belief, I gave my testimony. I don't remember who had filmed or who I discussed it with, but I believe it might have been Cynthia Hind at the time. Everything happened so quickly, and again, I was very young. But I do remember describing the reflectiveness of the beings like a fabric or a nail polish that changes hues with the light, and that I swear to God on every hair on my head that this had happened. Those were my words, and still are today. And I didn't use the term lightly either. It was actually against my faith to swear to God or use the Lord's name in vain. But I used them on sure-grounded testimony that we had seen something. I can describe the environment for me as being exciting and chaotic all at the same time. Growing up in Zimbabwe, I didn't ever really feel media impact or presence at all. So the thought that they were there, I'll admit, was exciting. But also the point was to feel heard, especially when you had seen something, you had something to say, and something so extraordinary had just occurred to you. I still to this day feel this way, and are left with many remaining unanswered questions that I feel I will never gain the answers that I'm looking for. However, I'm thankful for going through such a process and a journey in life, which has led me to discover, look deeper into the meanings of things, and become more self-aware. I don't want to say much more as this process is being documented. However, feel the need to speak about something that did occur and was very real. It's a personal journey and a personal process, one of which is not easy to walk in. Although I find it's been pretty cool and fascinating all at the same time. I'm not here to convince you, but I'm here to share my testimony and what I know to be true. It has also given me more insight into my faith, the study of the Bible, where both the words Ariel and alien are mentioned. These words appeared for me in the book of Isaiah 28, verse 21, to do his work, his strange work, and perform his task, his alien task. And Isaiah 29, verse 1, woe to you, Ariel. And this came from the New International Version. This made me investigate and look into historical sites from around the world, as well as looking into symbols and signs, all the while giving me the appreciation for them. Here I have brought with me what I call my journey art and the experiencer's process, which was triggered through another event in my life, at which some point I will also speak on. It was based on another profound encounter, which I had had before this prolific amount of artwork materialized. This event took place in my house at the time in Hamilton, and I will do my best to explain a little bit about this event. However, I'm still processing this encounter as well. It took place over 2 days, where grays and another type of being, which I refer to as my God experience, occurred. I was in my living room and was surrounded by a bright aura of light, which took over the whole room. It was yellow in its appearance, and overwhelming feelings of love, joy, and happiness surrounded me. I immediately fell to my knees and started crying in front of this being. Its face was changing back and forth from the head of a lion to a man to a being. It's all hard to explain, but again, this is what I remember and how I can describe it. Told that I would be walking through a fire and that they would always be with me. During this encounter, it was a feeling of being under control. Hard to explain, but it was an automatic experience of control. They wanted me to pull out certain items, which was my journal, Bible, and artwork that I had packed away for years. This was under the control of beings, and again, it's really hard to explain, but what happened? A prolific amount of artwork was triggered and continued to materialize. So you can look through it at your own interest and maybe see a little more insight into the experiencer's mind. Some is channeled, other works are emotional, expressive, and like what I like to call my journey. Little poems and stories came out as well throughout this time of healing and discovery and my personal walk. A lot of questions were asked along this journey. A few I asked were, who am I? Where do I come from? What am I doing here? And where do I go when I die? It takes a lot of time and energy and effort to really dig deep to find these answers to these questions. I am still in journey and still in process, as this is an ongoing search for answers. And I appreciate you taking the time to allow me to speak. And thank you for your understanding in something so very personal. I have a little short story of the butterfly that I'd like to read. And it was triggered and came out very quickly. Far away in a land, a voice spoke, asking, where did all the butterflies go? Everywhere I looked high and low, I could not see them, and my heart began to cry. They were so magical, and they brought a picture of beauty and light. But now they were all gone, and my heart sank so low, so low. Could it be that they were all dying? All I could think was, how did we let this happen? Broken into pieces, I was left having to pick them up. 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 piece. Where did they all go? I called out to them, asking them, begging them to come back. Don't leave us. We need you. I tried telling you that we missed you, that we loved you, but you never showed. Where did all the butterflies go? Spark of light heard my call. One did come and spoke to me. My child, you are killing us all. We have to go, or we will no longer survive. Our food is diminishing, the water's being tainted, and our air to breathe is all being destroyed. You do not want to change, so for this we must go. To a place far, far away, where we can live as one. I cannot let you in unless you want to listen. I do, I said. Please don't leave me. I can't live without you. It's such a dark place here, and I won't survive either. Then you must change, and I will take you to a place of unimaginable sights, a place you could never dream of. It's so beautiful there. But what can I do? I asked. You must help open the eyes of others to show them of what is going on. Tell them of this destruction that they are bringing onto this earth and help them change their ways. Then I can show you the magical garden we will live in. I will, I said. I promise. I won't let them do this to you any longer. But child, you must make sure they know it is through you that we have the chance to change, to bring awareness to the darkness you speak of, because you see, through your light is hope. And without hope, we can never go to the garden, place of magic where all love grows. So share your light and let hope sow. Now I must go. You have our message, so share it loud. Not all will hear, but your voice is strong and will ignite the hearts of others to bring about this change. Never forget the power you hold. Time to go. But I will be back for you if you can help. I can see it in your heart that you will. So this is not goodbye for now. Not goodbye forever, but goodbye for now. Where did all the butterflies go? And I would just like to... take the opportunity as well to thank Open Minds for giving me this opportunity to speak. To all those included in this event for making it happen. For myself as an experiencer, being heard has been important to me. Although it might not seem like much, it has meant the world to me. So I thank you all and appreciate the support and the care given to me while going through this. I would also like to thank Randall Nickerson and Luigi Ventitelli for being there for me while dealing with such a delicate situation, and for being a friend in what seemed like a very dark time in my life. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, and thank you to all of you.
That was beautiful. I would like to call up on stage Randall Nickerson. He's here. And Randall is going to talk about the film Aerial Phenomenon that is presently being completed. So, ladies and gentlemen, Randall Nickerson.
Good afternoon, or good morning. That always makes Emily speaking, always brings me to tears. Because it's happening to a lot of people that don't get heard, that have to live with it alone. And my heart goes out to those people. I think it's something that needs to change. I did bring a piece of paper here. So I just want to say, I know this, I'm speaking about the aerial film. I've been working on it for 8 years, a long time, investigating this event. During that time, I have had a lot of other people come forward to me, including classmates from high school, telling me about their experiences, friends, family. The widespread nature of this is not to be underestimated. And it has to do with every single one of us. Every single one of us on this planet. Every single one of you, whether you've seen these things or not. It's pretty important for all of us to understand that there's something here with us that is a little smarter and more evolved than us. And before I go any further, I really want to thank Luigi for being such a good friend for Emily and supporting her. I also want to thank, and also the work that he is doing in Canada, which is amazing. And for Emily, for her bravery for speaking out, because it's not easy when you put yourself out there. And I respect what she's doing. Because, to be honest with you, this is not the audience I want to be speaking to. This is not the audience that I want to see my film or our film. And it's not that I don't love you and think you're cool and all that, but I want to show it to the people that need to see it, that need to open their minds a little bit to understand we are in a different time. Science is telling us that. I've had witnesses coming forward to me from the military who feel safe to talk about it now that, hey, 10 years ago I didn't feel comfortable talking about it, but we just discovered all these life-supporting planets out there. I'm going to talk about it, potentially life-supporting planets. I mean, it's changed the entire scene on a science level as far as the possibility of life out there. We're still not getting to the fact that they may be very intelligent, smarter than us, and maybe we may need a little humility as we become a spacefaring civilization. So the film. Well, it's been a long journey, and I like to do things right. It may take a lot longer than it should. But again, we've had, funding has always been an issue. It's an expensive proposition to make a film, and on an independent level at that. But I felt this case was so important, not just because of the children that were there that witnessed this on that day, but also because there were adults that witnessed various things that were in the surrounding area of the school. So there's a lot of elements that I so wish I could share, and I'm going to have to wait till the film comes out, because I think that I don't want to ruin the present, so to speak. I really would like to have that box opened and the surprises come out on their own. We are looking for funding. We just returned from Africa for the third time to Zimbabwe, and it was much safer this time, thank God. And we're back to, we're in full post-production now. All the shooting is done. Would really like your support or anybody's support. We're looking for private funders. You can go to our website, which is aerialphenomenon.com. And if you can tweet it, Tumblr it, Facebook it, make a phone call and say, check out this website. Any of those many communication avenues that we have today, I would really, really appreciate it. And I think everybody, the people that were involved, I have a crew that's largely volunteer at this point. And we're working 12, 14 hours a day on this. I really would like to push the necessity for funding to in the final process of post-production, which includes paying for licensing fees for other people's footage, color correction, all the things that go in sound, which are coming up very soon in the process as we are moving toward the film this year and looking at September as a release date. So this is not fun for me. I'm not doing this for fun or career or whatever. This is very personal for me. And I feel like if I can make a difference in how people are treated that have gone through this stuff, I will feel like I've done a good job. Because these people matter. And there's no reason they should be treated or marginalized or laughed at. It's tough enough when you're given something like this that's that big, that's that heavy. So, I really appreciate Open Minds, Angela, John, Alejandro, everybody on the crew for just even allowing this space to be where we can talk about this stuff. Because it's important for every single person on this planet. And you. So I'm going to close, and I'm going to show the trailer that we have currently in motion. We'll be at the table out there. I'd love to give out cards for our website. Check it out. We have people that make donations. You get cool gifts like mugs and T-shirts and things like that. We've had to go to a lot of links to make it happen. And the people that are working with me, there's too many to thank at this moment, and the funders that have come through, my angels, but you can see their names on the website. Okay, let me just make sure I can get this running. No, if that's playing full screen. Yeah, that's good enough. Yep, thanks. I do this all the time and I can't even remember a simple... It's Sunday.
I was not so frightened in the war zones of Angola or Rwanda as I was when this story hit. Arrow School, 19th September 94.
Just come and sit on these chairs along here. Did you all see something?
Yes.
Were you afraid?
Yes. It was just glistening in the trees. And there was a man.
What did he look like?
His face was like this and his eyes were down here.
I've never seen anything like it in my life.
It was the absence of noise at the time.
One of the most widely reported unidentified flying objects in recent times.
It had a silver, but that was down the bottom.
Sure, it wasn't an aircraft,
No.
something that the Zimbabwe Air
It
Force
was like
had got?
in a disc.
There's one thing sitting on the side and another thing sort of like running up and down the top.
He had a big head and big black eyes.
I just thought it was some kind of alien from a different planet.
Well, I was just a hard-ass journalist, skeptical as everybody would be. And it was the same story. And I started getting goosebumps.
And the stories are consistent.
You think it's possible that one imaginative child had a story and kind of stirred the rest of them?
I don't believe. Mm-hmm. I honestly believe they saw something, but for me to actually draw a conclusion as to what it is, I don't think I could do that at this point in time.
What did it feel like when he was looking at you?
I felt scared. My heart kind of went faster and then slower and then faster and then slower. I thought the aliens would attack me.
Would attack you and do what? Hurt you?
Yes.
How would they do that?
I don't know.
The one thing I've told everybody is that you must realize we are dealing with children here.
Right.
And sometimes the imagination can get carried away with them.
It wasn't just Ariel School. There were a lot of different occurrences that happened over probably that whole week.
None of us saw it. We just happened to be in a staff meeting.
Child can't make that up. And I mean, children know when other children are conning them. And about 100